What's up, guys? Welcome back to Backroad Resurrection, where in this video we're going to go into depth on this thing for tuning for the car. Do you have a carburetor that's a vacuum secondary and you're getting real close to throwing in the towel because it's not performing like you want it to? Well, in this video we're going to cover tips and tricks on maybe help to resurrect that and get it back to where you're happy with it and to help your street performance. So today we're going to get into what we found in this carb that we bought off the Facebook Marketplace and how to make this carb run great on this 383 we got behind us.
Yeah, don't be afraid of all those Marketplace deals, guys, because you can get some really good deals out there. And then you're buying off other people that don't really know how to tune this stuff. So that's why we're here. We're here to help you work through process like what we found in this carburetor here. This is to start out some qualifications here. This is a 750 Demon. This is the old style Demon. This is one of the original ones. It's basically based off the Holley platform. But what we were dealing with and what the symptoms on this motor is it runs good at idle. Now on the AFR, which is the air fuel meter, you know, it was reaching 13.8, 14, is that correct?
Yeah, it was around about 13.
Okay, so the idling is doing real good. It's where it needs to be as far as what's called staunch, which will range anywhere between 13.2 and 14.2. So every gauge is a little bit different, so just be warned if you're using AFR, they won't read exactly the same. So you're looking for ranges. Okay, so what we found here is we can put this carburetor on this motor. It's a 383 cubic inch Chevrolet motor. Obviously it's a stroke motor, but the thing that he was noticing is it tip in at idle. It's doing really good, but you put under load, it stumbles a little bit, and when you get in the transition slots on the carburetor, which should be that intermediate range, it's going lean, and even starting to step into it, it's going really lean. We're like, what was it, 20s?
So this one specifically, watching on my gauge, driving it from the farm to the shop here, it was running at idle and on the first two barrels, it was running between 13 to 18. And about 3/4 of the throttle, it would stay about 18, 19. But as soon as you went full throttle with it, it would peg it out. It would peg out the gauge. It jumped 23, 24 immediately, and it's just not putting any fuel in at that point.
Dangerous lanes. So tell them what jets we found in the front versus the back metering.
So in this one specifically, in one of our previous videos, we talked about the valve, the springs on these. This had a super heavy spring in it, and it wasn't fully opening under any motor. It really won't. So what we found is the person that was previously working with this carburetor had 68s in the front. Okay, generally you want about 4 differential, and that's perfect. However, instead of having that, we had 68s in the front and we had 83s in the rear. Now 83s in the rear, that is a massive jet. That is if you are dealing with something with extremely low vacuum or an extremely overbuilt motor, and we're getting way out of street building at that point.
Wow, that's
so
a daily driver.
What we did is we took our previous carburetor that we're going to feature in a later video, and we pulled the jets, we pulled the power valve out because we've already vacuum tested this motor. We know where it's at. We put those jets in, and here shortly we're going to put this carburetor back together. We're going to run the AFRs, and we're going to break this down and then get you into the more in-depth tuning of this carburetor to this 383 stroker.
All right, guys, to get to this point, we already know what power valve to run in this, but it's a good time to talk about power valves and how to select them. To get baseline, you're going to need a vacuum gauge. That's how you're going to determine what your motor needs. Every motor will have different needs. If you have a cam in it, it's not going to pull as much vacuum as a bone stock motor. And so that's why you really need a vacuum gauge. And so just barely cruising along, 55 mile an hour, giving it just enough gas to keep it running at a steady pace, not accelerating, not deaccelerating, just steady pace, that input. You need to know what vacuum signal you have. And so if you have a 20 on the vacuum, you're going to need about a 10 or 10.5 vacuum or a power valve. But if you're only pulling, say, 10 psi or 10 inches of vacuum, you're going to need a 5 or a 5.5 power valve. But that's a quick down and dirty on how to select the power valve for your motor, depending on how your motor is built, because at different cams was going to have different vacuums, and it's going to determine what you need, and that's going to be one thing different. We've already established what this motor needs, and it's a, what size was it, Dakota?
That's a 6.5 power valve.
Okay, it's a 6.5 power valve. And so we know that that's the common for this motor. So we went ahead and set this up with the power valve. They're easy enough to change. There's a number stamped on them. And that's how you tell them apart. They make a lot of different ones depending on a lot of different cam profiles. Yep. So in the long term, again, what he was talking about a minute ago, it's running 13.6 to 14 at idle, which is about where you want it. You don't want it any richer than that, but you don't want it any leaner than that either. But as soon as he tips in, it's going lean. It's going lean all the way through the transition slots and into the wide open throttle position. It's going dangerously lean. I mean, it's pegging the gauge, so you're going to burn the valves up if you try to run one this lean. That's why we dug into this one to see where this one is at as far as the jet sizes and this carburetor.
Now, on power valves, because that's not something I see covered very much, and he was actually talking about it off camera. So on this 600 you've seen in previous videos, it's running a 9.5. It also came off of a stock 302. So the general rule of thumb on this is the higher the number, the more vacuum your engine's producing. The lower number for power valve is the least amount of vacuum your engine's producing. So kind of keep that in mind when you're shopping for these power valves to kind of give you a gauge on what you need. The lower the number, the less vacuum your engine's able to produce. The higher number means the more vacuum your engine's able to produce. There's not a lot of information on that, and it's not very common. So hopefully that kind of helps you guys out in getting that kind of squared away.
Absolutely, but I figured it'd be a good time to talk about, how these metering blocks work. The metering blocks on the carburetor, that's how you adjust the idle. That's what these screws here on the side are. So when we get this bolted on here, you'll see us adjusting it to be able to control the fuel mixture at idle. These don't do anything other than at idle. But the transition slots that you see here, you see the different holes, those are for your intermediate circuit and your emulsifier, because this basically bleeds air into here. Easiest way to describe this portion of it is a lot of the newer carburetors, you can change the air bleeds on the top of the carburetor, which you can use to richen up or lean out the carburetor. Since we're talking about lean conditions and rich conditions, I figure it'd be a good time to do this, talk about this for a second. The air bleeds, the tip that you're going to see is like these here on the top. They're just like the primary jets that you change out to for your primaries, for your main fueling, and they change out the same. But you can richen up or lean up the overall, or you really get into that niche and that in between by starting messing with your air bleeds. But I just want to bring that up since we're talking about the riching of fuel. But this is how this all works. It's very simple. Valve works on vacuum, and the more velocity goes through your carburetor, the more fuel it wants to pull through. The air bleeds allows more fuel or less fuel to come through, same as your primary jets. Your power valve, again, once it gets below whatever that set value is, 10.5, 6.5, 5.5, 9.5. That's when this opens up and it starts dumping a lot more fuel in the system to richen it up even more. Typically, you're half to 3/4 throttle by the time this thing opens up. So, I think we've covered about everything for this. So,
one major thing for all of you, when you guys are pulling these apart, make sure for your bolts, if you have the plastic gaskets or if your kit comes with the cork gaskets, make sure they are fully removed from your bowls, or make sure they stay with the bolts, because a lot of times what happens is they may double up, they may stick to the actual bowl itself, and in some cases you're going to be tight and you're going to be like, well, hold on, am I over tightening the bowl? Because you can strip these things out and it is a nightmare to fix. Yeah. Make sure it's got the gaskets on there, because we have seen a ton of carburetors leak over the years because improperly placed gaskets or over torquing on the actual bowls themselves.
Yeah, some of your original gaskets, guys, for these bowls, for your carburetor bowls, were cork. They went to a rubber type material and now they're like a Teflon type material. So they've gotten a lot better over the years. Speaking of that, obviously you want to make sure your gaskets are good before you put it back together. It's good to use, if you plan on tuning your motor and you think you're going to be making a bunch of jet changes, it's good to get a set of reusable gaskets. These are the blue gaskets. This Demon has the red on them. But let's get a set of reusable gaskets from Holley or a reputable company like Jegs or Summit or wherever you want to order your parts from, before you put it back together, because the last thing you want to do is get it back on it and it's leaking and you got to take it back apart and change the gasket. So another quick little tip. So let's get this bolted back together. I think we're ready to start testing this on the car, and see where we're at. So let's get this carburetor back together and we'll get it bolted on and see where we're at. All right, guys, while he's putting the carburetor back on the car here so we can fire it up and see where we're at as far as our fuel mixture and probably take it out for a test run, I figured it would be a good time to show you how to adjust a float. The newer style typically has a flathead screwdriver and this what looks like a bolt. It's actually not. Let me show you this real quick. There's some gaskets here, guys, so you got to make sure that those gaskets are good, because if you don't, it's going to leak on you. But there's just a screw, and then there's this hollow bolt that's cammed. Looks like kind of like a, I don't know what to compare it to, but it fits over top of the needle and seat, and that's actually how you adjust the float up and down, is by twisting this. And so as you turn this in and out, it's going to adjust this float up or down. And the easy way to do this is, if you try to do this while the motor's running, which you can do, you just got to be quick and just keep in mind it's going to leak fuel on you. Just make sure you have something under here to catch the fuel, so obviously bad things don't happen. It's best just to do it between runs. But what's on the old style, you're going to have a screw here on the side of the bowl, and you're going to want to adjust the fuel up to the bottom side of that hole. The nice thing about the newer carburetors is they have sight windows and it's easier to see. But you're going to adjust this float to where it comes up. The fuel level is going to be about that level right there. I know you probably can't see that casting, but when you get with these apart, there's a line there, which lines up with the bottom side of those threads. So if it's quickly running out, lower the float a little bit. If you don't see the fuel up to the lines, raise the bowl up, the float up, and that's how you properly set the fuel level in here. Too lean or too little fuel can change the fuel enrichment of the carburetor. Too much can do the same. So quick little tip on here on how to set the float and what these components are for. Once you get it set to where you want it, make sure you take a wrench to hold it and make sure you snug this down pretty good before you start it back up. So anytime you make an adjustment, you're going to want to loosen this top, make your adjustment, and then tighten it back up, and then restart the vehicle. And that's how you set it. If you got an electric fuel pump, it's easier. You can do it with an electric fuel pump. So now let's get in here and we'll see where we're at on the car.